Hello, everybody. This is Laura Peterson. I'm your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So lots of great stuff to go over today when it comes to real estate and what's happening in that Central Florida market, which is where we're at, which obviously is Orlando. And I start out with the stats every week because I think it gives everybody a realistic picture. I think I mentioned last week that I had a call last week from one of my clients, and he said basically, hey, I see that foreclosures are up in Orlando 20%. So, hey, be looking for a foreclosure home for me. Well, in his price range, there were a whopping, in 4 counties, 20 foreclosure homes, I think it was, or maybe it was 20 total that were out there that were on the market. So it was a huge increase, but the increase was from nothing to that, which ended up being, I think I figured it out, that it was 0.00001% of the sales are foreclosure. Now, what this gentleman is looking for is that he's looking for a good deal. So I can find him a good deal. That's not a problem. But looking at a specific thing that's a bank-owned home and that you think that you're going to get a good deal, they aren't necessarily always a good deal. The bank is going to sell that at market value. You know, what happened several years ago, which, believe it or not, it's a lot of years ago now, it feels like, but I was in the business. I got into the real estate business in 2005. And so I've been doing this for 20 plus years now, just over 20 plus years. But basically, when I got my license, I remember it was in July of 2005. And then, and where I was at, everybody was like, oh, you know, you just kind of sit here and do floor time where I was at. And they said people walk in and they're going to buy houses. And sure enough, for the first couple months, that's what happened. And the market was going up astronomically. It was going up 5% a month. And in my opinion, I was just thinking, this is not sustainable. And I knew about economics and all of that, and that I knew what goes up probably is going to come down, must come down. And I remember that there were agents telling people, hey, you know, the prices in this area have never gone down and they're not going to go down. And I'm thinking, that's not exactly a good thing to be telling people, because, you know, we don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. We can't tell for sure, but we can watch trends. We can see what's going on and all of that. And kind of make informed decisions and say, hey, this is my opinion. But basically, when it comes to facts, you know, you've got to look at the facts. And so basically what had happened is that in the fall of 2005, very shortly after I got my license, I noticed that things were starting to stall. And sure enough, they were stalling, and they stalled. And, you know, what had happened is that the prices that year, even before I had my license, had been going up 5% a month consistently for 10 months. Okay. So that is a huge increase in the prices. You know, so that was just absolutely astronomical in regards to the prices and what had happened during that year. And what had happened is that people got to the point where they said, okay, this used to seem like a good deal. It doesn't seem like a good deal to me anymore. And so it kind of froze is what happened. And then it stayed that way for just a few months. And then it started to fall, because I remember speaking to a customer in the beginning of 2006, because she had put her house on the market and she had paid a lot of money for it. I think it was $700,000 in this particular area where she was at. And she had paid $700,000 for it, and that's what she wanted to get out of it. But the prices were falling. And so I sat her down and I showed her what had happened and what was going to happen, and, explaining that the prices had gone up so much, and she had bought it at the height. And so that's why it was at 700,000. And so I told her, I said, if you want to get rid of this, because it was not her primary property, I said, in my opinion, what you're going to have to do is that you're going to have to sit down and really, think about this. But if it were me, I would lead the pack here. I would lower my price now. I would dump this thing. And I think that you'll be happy that you did that. Otherwise, you're going to just follow the market and be one of many, and who knows where you're going to end up. And she said, you're right. I want to do that. And so she did. And so, yes, she took a loss, maybe about 50,000 or whatever on her property. But remember, I told you that that property when she bought it was 700,000. When the bottom hit in 2010, and, everybody's like 2008, 2009. Yeah, here it started sooner because the prices had gone up so much, because there was so much kind of inflation in the prices, in my opinion. And so what happened is that the prices went down, 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 down. And in 2010, those condos that at once cost her 700,000 were then going for 100,000. So the bottom line is that if she would have followed the market and followed what was going on, then she would have lost 600,000 instead of 50,000. It might have taken her under. She might have done a short sale. She might have, done a foreclosure. Who knows what would have happened in regards to her and her situation. I'm not exactly sure. But basically, when you're looking at it, you've got to kind of look ahead and say, hey, what's going on? What do I think I can do? What can make a difference here in regards to, my situation and all of that kind of good stuff. So that's what happened, is that we did that. And she was very happy that she did, because in looking in hindsight, she was like, that was really a good decision, that she could keep herself whole. Yes, she lost some money, but at the same time, she was able to go on. And several years after that, perhaps buy another property, perhaps not. I'm not exactly sure. But, she lived in Miami, so there were other opportunities and that kind of stuff. It disrupted her life, but it didn't disrupt her life to the point where it was devastating. And so when you're looking at it, that's what you have to look at. So there's a lot of statistics that come out in the news, and they're always telling, the doom and gloom or the shiny, sunny days and all of that kind of stuff. But you really have to look at what's going on. So I remember when the interest rates went down, I had people that would call me all the time, and they would say, oh, the interest rates, they're only going to stay here for a minute and then they're going to go back up. Well, they stayed down for several years. I think it was somewhere around 5 or 6 years. I'd have to look at it for sure. But when they went below that 5% and went all the way down to, I have customers that had bought houses at 2.75 and stuff, and the market stayed there for a good year, and then it went up to 3, maybe 3.3 or something, but it was still sustainable and it was still very common. And so people were like, oh, this is never going to last. And it's kind of been the same thing, that when, the market stabilized after we took a little jump after COVID, we took a little jump. It was, I think about a 20% jump. And basically, everybody's like, oh, the prices are going to start falling. I'm going to wait until the prices start falling. And they're still waiting, because the market has stayed very stable and very consistent. Now, I'm not going to say that in the outlying areas and some of the areas that might not be as a desirable location, that the prices haven't fallen a little bit, and they have. They might have fallen in the neighborhood of about 5%, but there was a 20% gain. So they're still ahead about 15% in regards to what's going on. And so you just have to be conscious in regards to what's happening in the market, what's going on in your local area, because it is very local. But when I give the statistics, I'm talking about what's going on in Central Florida, what's happening with that. And, I'm letting you know, hey, this is my opinion. It may not be right. I don't have the crystal ball, but I do have the ability to look at what's happening, get the feel for the market in regards to what's going on, in watching what's going on in the people that I'm working with personally, that I can see what's going on if, things are starting to jump or if things are starting to slow down a little bit in regards to what's going on. And so you have to have that perspective when you're looking at it, in my opinion. I think it gives you a better idea into, what your plans are and what you want to do. And so that's why I go into the stats and talk about it. And unfortunately, I didn't get to them at this particular segment, but I'll definitely get to them with my opinions in the next one. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and I'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I want to get to the stats, like I didn't get to the last segment, but basically when it comes down to it, I'm going to give you my opinions, as you know. So this is the week of November 2nd to the 8th, and the sales went down of single-family homes from 428 to 360. So again, on just looking at it, somebody would say, oh my gosh, the sales are down. No, the sales were up last week because it was the end of the month. There's always a surge at the end of the month. People want to get their sales in, and so they definitely do. So 360 is not a bad number. That's very consistent with where we've been. So we're looking really good in regards to that. The median price increased to 430. So we're still kind of in that realm. It's like when you're looking at just a week, we're looking for trends and what's happening. I was, on a Zoom with some colleagues a couple of days ago, and one of the things that they were looking at were the stats, and the guy that I was talking to, what he was saying is, he said, when you're looking at a week, you can't necessarily tell about trends, but if you can look at a couple weeks or anything, you can kind of be ahead of what's going on and see what's going on. So basically, we're right there in what's going on with that. Now, the inventory actually went down by 38 to 8,920. So what that all means is that, let me just break it down a little bit. Of those 360 homes, 23 of them were under 250,000, 21 between 250 and 300, 98 between 300 and 400, 400 to 500 had 84, 500 to a million had 109, and 25 of them sold over $1 million. So you're asking about that 8,920. What does that mean? Well, that means that overall we're at a 5.72 months of inventory. Now, a normal market is considered between 4 and 6. So we're kind of getting to that not a normal market where it's a buyer's market. And so that's what's kind of changed. And I would definitely say that that is true, because there are a lot of seller concessions that are happening in this market. There are a lot of demands that are being made by the sellers when it comes to selling your house that might take a little bit more money out of your pocket. And so you definitely have to look at it. The closing costs are probably one of the biggest things that I'm seeing that's happening, and the request for you to pay their buyer's commission. And there was a lawsuit a few years ago now. Well, I guess it's just been settled in the last couple of years. But basically, that buyers need to pay for their own representation. But what's happening is that the buyers are saying, hey, I'd like the seller to pay for that. And the seller, if you've gone a while, it's like if you're looking at all the offers, then you have to consider that in. I'm always looking at what the net price is and what we can do and what we're going to do on that. And and then we just kind of go from there. So the months of inventory, like I said, are 5.72 overall. Under 250, we've got 6 months of inventory, which is kind of interesting. And then we also have 6 between 250 and 300. We go to 4.49 between 300 and 400. Then we're 5 months between 400 and 500. So right there in that sweet spot, we're a little bit more towards a seller market or even balanced. But 500 to a million at 6.57, so a little bit into the buyer's market, and then over a million, we're at 8.44. So that would definitely be considered a buyer's market. So, you just kind of look at that and say, you would think, wow, the list to sale price ratio must be a lot different as well. Well, it is still hanging in there kind of where it has been for a few years now at 97.04 overall. When you're looking at the under 250, as usual this week, it's a lot lower. It's at 91.52. Usually under 250, those houses need work. And so as a result of that, they definitely are getting less than asking price. Then you go to 250 all the way over to 500 and basically, or up to a million actually. And we're in the 97.5 in every one of them or higher. And so they're a lot closer to asking price. And then over a million, we're at 95.44. And so the lower end and the higher end, as usual, is staying true to form. The days to contract is 72. And that would reflect because there's inventory. And so the thing is that as a seller, when you're looking at that and pricing your property, I have a pricing strategy that I go into that I might go into later in the show, but right now, I want to get to the condo, townhomes, and villa stats. But basically, the market is going to tell you, well, it's going to tell you with my marketing, if we're right in the ballpark in that. It's not necessarily if you just have somebody that's just going to throw it on the MLS, that might not be the case, that, your price might not be off. But you do have to be very aggressive in this market, and the condos, townhomes, and villas are even going to tell you more. So the condos, townhomes, and villas, there were 93 that sold this week, and it was 110 the week before. So not a huge difference, but at the end of the month, as I talked about, the median price increased to 270. So again, within that margin of, it kind of varies week to week. And that inventory increased by 8 now, so that's 4338. So you might think, well, that's not much and doesn't really mean too much. And, when it comes to the condos, townhomes, and villas, we're looking at a lot different situation than we are for the single family homes. There were 93 houses or condos, townhomes, and villas that sold. 40 of them were under 250. And 14 were between 250 and 300, 27 between 3 and 4. There were 6 between 4 and 5, 5 between 500 and a million, and 1 sold over a million this week. So we've gone for a couple, 3 weeks with the houses over a million that haven't sold. So it's saying we only have 4.85 months of inventory, but if we had to take that times 3, because that's really what's happened in the last few weeks, we actually have more like 12 months of inventory at least in the over a million. So that's what I'm saying, that you can look at that stat and you can say, oh wow, there's only 4 months of inventory, but if you look at the month, it's going to show you a completely different picture because there aren't $1 million condos that are selling every week. And so it's probably for sure at least 12, if not more months of inventory. Overall, in the condos, townhomes, and villas, we have 10.77 months of inventory, totally a buyer's market. Whereas, like the single family homes was at 5.7, I believe. So basically a big difference there. Under 250, they're at 9.8 months of inventory, 11.29, 250 to 300. 9.48 is the lowest between 3 and 4. 4 and 5 is at 19.77. 500 to a million is at 14.31. And over a million, like I said, that's at 12. So basically the list to ask price ratio you would think would be a little bit less, and it is reflecting that in the price a little bit. 95.53. Remember, under 250 we sold the bulk of them, 40 of 93, and they were at 94.11. So that's what's really driving that downward trend this week. The over a million one, that one sold at 90% of asking price. And then in the middle, they're all at 96.5. And there is a 97 that is between 500 and a million. So it's down a little bit from the single family homes, but not a whole lot. And 97 days on the market versus 72 for a single family home. So the thing that I want to impress on you when we're looking at the condos, townhomes, and villas, that totally emphasizes the point that you have to look at what's going on and you have to be aggressive in your pricing. People tell me all the time, sellers do, that they say, hey, I just want to try it. Well, just trying it might not be the right place for you, and it usually is not. You really have to look at the best situation for you and your family and what you're trying to do, what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish, and all of that. And I'll go into in the next segment why it is what it is. But basically, when it comes down to it, you really have to look at the market and see what's going on, either as a buyer or a seller. And I'm going to talk about it from both sides when we come to it, separate it out and all of that kind of good stuff. But there's lots of great information coming up right after the break. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and I will see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I was talking about in the last segment condos, townhomes, and villas, and as a seller or a buyer, kind of how you have to look at the market and look at what's going on. And as sellers, if you have a condo or if you have a house, you have to look at the market and what's going on in it. And so basically, and in not just in the overall market, but you have to look at your specific zip code, your school district, not the district, your grade school. You have to look at your subdivision and all of that kind of stuff to see what's going on. So, for example, in a condo, and we'll take them because they are in developments, and there might be a couple of hundred, there might be, 400 or 500 that are in that particular development. And, you as a seller have to look at what's going on and say, okay, this is what I have to do. There's a gentleman that I'm going to meet that I've got an appointment with in a couple of weeks that he's coming down, and we're going to be, walking through his development and that kind of stuff. And within half a mile of his particular unit, there are about 50 condos that are on the market. A half a mile, maybe it's even a quarter mile. I'd have to look at it again to make sure, but I think it's a quarter mile. And so when you've got 50 plus units that are on the market within a quarter mile of where your place is, you can say, well, I'm going to just price it this way, and if somebody comes along. Okay, the bottom line is that if you don't have it priced appropriately, they're not going to make it to your unit. Because the bottom line is that the average person looks at 10 units in person before they decide to buy something. Some less, some more. But on average, it's about 10 units. So if there are 50 on the market, the first thing that you need to do is you need to stand out so that you're one of the 10. If nobody sees your property, it's not going to sell. And that's basically what the bottom line, why I say with my marketing and what I do, my job is to get people into your home. And one of the ways that we get them in there is the price. If we can't get them in there because of the price, then people look at it and they say, oh, there's something wrong with the property or something like that because it's been on the market so long. Not necessarily. There's not necessarily anything wrong with the property. I mean, I've got a seller that they can barely show the house. They show it, but they can barely show the house because of their pets that they have, because of some of the situations that they have going on with their kids that they can't get out of the house when they want to have showings. So they decline a lot of showings. So guess what that does? That increases the days on the market, and people look at it and they go, oh my gosh, what's wrong with that house? There's nothing wrong with the house. Nothing at all. It's only 3 years old, so there is definitely nothing wrong with it. And you go, well, why are those people selling? Well, as a lot of some of Northerners that come down, they came down from New Jersey and they decided that they want to go back to New Jersey. There's more family and that kind of thing there, more of a support system that they want to have for their kids and everything like that. So they want to move back. So that's the only thing that's wrong with the house. Nothing else is wrong with it at all. They've already done an inspection. They know what the deal is on it. It's only 3 years old. It's a great neighborhood. It doesn't have a pool, but the community pool is literally, it's like kitty corner from the house. So it's like 2 houses down on the other side of the street is where the community pool is. So it's very convenient, and you don't even have to, maintain the pool yourself. If you want to have it, it's all there for you. So basically, when it comes down to it, it's like there's a lot of judgments that are made on particular houses, but if you don't have it priced appropriately and you don't allow people to see it, it's not going to sell. So basically, when it comes down to it, you definitely need to look at everything. And that's why I always say days on the market are not your friend. But you have to price it so people are going to come in it. When you're looking at that condo that I started talking about in this segment, is that the bottom line is that, if there's 50 to look at, people are only going to choose probably 10 that they want to see. And then maybe they'll look at 12 or 13, but they're not going to look at 50. So even though yours might be the best looking one, it might have those features that they want, and they can look at them online, but they might not get to look at them online either. And they might look at it and go, well, there's 50 properties in the market. So what's going on in this development? Why are there so many houses on the market? Well, it's kind of that sellers held off and they didn't want to, they wanted to wait for the prices to change. And now they're like, well, they're not changing. So I really want to move. I need to get something bigger. I need to get something smaller. I've decided condo life isn't for me, all of those kinds of things that go into it. And so as a result of it, you have to stand out in the market. And in this market, it's more important than any other. And it's not just about throwing the house on the MLS. When this gentleman called me, and he said to me, he goes, he said, well, I'm just calling to find out what your fee is. And I said, well, basically the bottom line is, so what you're telling me is that you think that every realtor is the same, and that it doesn't matter who you choose. All that matters is the price. And I want to let you know that my stats are that I sell houses 22% faster, and that I put 6.1% more money in your pocket. That the last time I did the stats, that's what they were. And so I said, so basically when you're looking at, and that's compared to the average agent. So I said, so what you're telling me is that you think that I'm that it's just a commodity and that any realtor would do. I told him, I said, I am not the cheapest realtor out there, but if I'm going to get an extra percent or maybe 2, but probably just like 1% or so, more than the average agent, then basically you've got to look at it. But, in regards to if you're going to put 6% more in your pocket and you're going to pay 1% for doing that, I think that everybody all day long would do that, right? It just makes sense. So it's not always about price. And so, we set up an appointment so I could go over, what I do different in order to get that extra money in his pocket. And so we are going to be meeting, and going over it and everything to figure out, if it's the right fit for him and I to work together. And basically, when it comes down to it, if it's like he's unrealistic in regards to the pricing and everything in what's going on there, then it might not be the right fit for us to work together at this point in time, because I'm just going to be wasting my time, because it's not gonna your house can't stand out with the pricing and everything. So when it comes down to it, there are a lot of factors that are involved when it comes to selling your house, and a lot of things to be done in order to make things happen. And I want to make sure that as a seller that you basically are on the right path. Now in the next segment, I'm going to talk about the buyers, because there's a lot of things that you need to look at, and the most important thing, or the funniest thing that happens is, it's not really funny, but it kind of is, when people are looking online and they're seeing something and then they go in person and they're like, oh my gosh, this is not exactly what I expected. And I find that all the time. And that's really where you need someone who does know the market that can actually help navigate through that they can let you know in advance that, based on what we've been talking about, maybe that's not the right decision for you. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll be back right after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I was talking about condos and buyers and houses and buyers and everything. And basically, one of the things that I do that I just think it's fun to find the house for the buyer and find that needle in the haystack. We do all kinds of things to find off-market houses and stuff like that, even in this market, because believe it or not, with the months of inventory and everything out there, there might be choices, but might still not be the thing that you're looking for. So what we do is that we find the off-market properties that are what you're looking for, so that you can find the best thing that you can afford and everything, and that you're looking for. And maybe it's that you can afford more, but you want to stick within a particular price point or whatever. So just so that you can meet your goals in regards to what you're looking at and looking for. And so basically what we do is, I go ahead and I look and I find those. And what I have found is that once I start working with somebody and we go look at some houses, and then they pick them out at the beginning. I pick a few and they pick a few. And basically when it comes down to it and we're looking at them, the houses usually that they pick are not what they're looking for, because I sit down with buyers in the beginning and we go through what you're looking for, and not just, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath or a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, but we talk about neighborhoods. We talk about lifestyle. We talk about what you're looking for, what's important in that house. Is it being close to somebody? I was talking to somebody last week, and they're moving down here and they want to be within 2 miles of this particular address that they gave me. So, okay, well, that makes it easy. And they want to be within a golf cart drive, basically, is what it comes down to some of their friends, and to go around the neighborhood in a golf cart and maybe avoid having 2 cars and everything like that. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but basically that's what they're looking for. And so when you're looking at houses in regards to what you want to have and what you can have, it makes a difference in finding out, basically what the real needs are, and kind of reading behind the lines. And what I've found is that most of the time, and I would say all but I think of the thousands of houses that I've sold in my career, I think there's only been a handful that the buyer has found the house besides me, that I haven't picked out, that they picked out, that wasn't on my list. And basically, so And usually it's because they changed their criteria and forgot to tell me or something like that when that happens. But basically, my point is that when you look at the pictures and you look at real life, after you look at the pictures and you go into it, you're like, oh my gosh, what happened? There's something that's different about that. So you definitely want to make sure that you've got your I's dotted and T's crossed when you're looking at it, but you've got somebody that's in your corner looking for beyond the obvious. And that's what I think is really important and everything to look at. And the other thing that I wanted to cover today was something that I did hear on the news. And so I looked into it a little bit further before we have this discussion. And it's not out there yet, but it was something that Trump proposed this week. And that is a 50-year mortgage. And I thought, wow, I think that's a great idea. And you might think, well, and when you look at all the critics, they're like, oh, they're going to pay a lot more in interest and everything like that. Well, that would be if they kept that particular loan for all 50 years, which is probably not what they're going to do. That would mean that they would stay in that house for 50 years, which is probably not what they're going to do. And, so it comes down to affordability is basically what it is. As all of you might know, if you've bought a house before, buying a house and your buying power comes down to what the bottom line is that what it comes down to is that there are regulations for every loan. You can't go to this lender and it's any different than the one next door, that there are ratios that have to be met in regards to your total debt and your debt on the house and all of that kind of stuff in regards to what's the minimum amount that you have to pay. And even if you get an adjustable rate mortgage that you might have a lower rate right now, you have to qualify at that higher rate. So even though the payment might be down now and you're thinking, I'm going to change it, you have to qualify where you're at right now. You don't have any choice in that. And so looking at this, when you're looking at a 50-year mortgage, what that is going to do is that would, for some people, change the affordability factor on it. So when you're looking at a $450,000 mortgage, which our average price is $430 this week. So that would be the mortgage itself, and the interest rate of 6.17 on a 30-year loan, which is what's common right now, the price would be $27.71, and if you went to a 50-year loan, it would be at $24.52. So that is a difference of $320 roughly. So $320 a month basically makes it more affordable for a lot of people when it comes down to it. Now, basically, if you got a 50-year loan and you wanted to pay that $27.71, you would still pay off that property in 30 years if you wanted to do that. So basically, it's like it's spreading it out, but that doesn't mean that you have to take all of that time to pay that particular loan if you were going to stay in that house. It just locks in the interest rate. It locks in that lower payment and everything when it comes down to it. And I was talking to somebody and they said, well, I don't know that I'm going to live another 50 years and all of that. And I said, well, it doesn't mean that they're not going to give you that loan because they don't know that you're going to stay in that house either for 50 years, but they're spreading it out. They're making their money right now on that interest. Maybe the interest rate is going to be a little bit higher with that. The product has not been rolled out yet. It was just introduced this week. And so as a result of that, they're doing all the research and everything on it, and it will impact affordability. And does that mean that the prices are going to go up? Possibly, but at this point, it's going to take care of the inventory. The inventory, in my opinion, is what's going to go first to make it more of a normal market. And then after that, the prices may go up a little bit and they might adjust it. And maybe it would only be a short period of time that it's available, but that is the kind of things that people are looking for. It's like they can buy houses when it's at 5% is what they're saying, because the affordability factor will be that the average person in our area can afford it. the challenge that we have is affordability, which means that people don't make enough money to afford the houses that are out there. And so they settle or they decide to continue to rent. At $24.52 for a $450,000 house, you can't rent it for that price. And so you're going to be locked in with your rental prices not going up or anything like that. And so I think it gives options. I thought that was a light at the end of the tunnel. If the interest rates can't go down right now, then it basically, buys people in. But when the interest rates do go down, you can refinance. Maybe you would refinance to a 30-year loan, and then it would be $24.52 as well, for the price at that point in time. So basically there are a lot of factors when it comes to real estate. It's not going to be the be all and the end all. It's not going to be for everybody, but for those people that maybe want to stretch and want to live in a particular neighborhood that they can't afford right now, and instead of driving an hour every day to work both ways, there's one guy that I was talking to the other day, and he said, it takes me 2 hours and 20 minutes to get home right now because of the traffic, and it's only about 30 miles. And so if that family could move closer to his job or move somewhere that was a little bit easier to get to traffic wise, it might make a big difference for them and their family. So we're just looking at all the factors here. Just thought I would throw it out there, and I thought that it was an interesting proposition and definitely something worth considering. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we will see you next week. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.